Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast. I'm your host, Hilke Faber. I'm here together with Carson. Carson, how are you today?
I'm great, Hilke. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you always. This is episode 76, and we're going to talk about connected communication practice number 3. That's as many numbers I'm going to use in this podcast. I'm going to talk about speaking our authentic truth as opposed to beating around the bush or being brutally honest. Like, how can we be deeply honest and deeply kind? And when I think about what makes leaders great leaders, what makes team members great team members, what makes friends great friends, what makes family members great family members, and so on, it's often including how honest we are, how really, really honest we are. And this is a very tall order. And I invite us to think about that for the next half hour, thinking about what is it like at work, at home, and other parts of life to be really honest. And that requires us to, first of all, want to be honest. Well, there's something in us that wants to be honest because, we know inside of us when we're speaking or when we're in our truth or when we're not. Like, we know when we're fibbing, telling a little lie. A lot of that going around these days, and it's been going on probably for centuries or millennia. People fib. Humans fib. That's what we do. And we know in ourselves when we're fibbing. We know it. We know when we're not entirely honest. When our boss asks, "How is it going?" We say, "Great." And inside of us is like, "Ugh." Or when we are talking to a colleague and we're saying, "Yeah, I agree with you." Well, we're part of no, that's not quite it. Or when we're going along to get along. Also, when we are overcharging, when we're like adamant about something and saying, "This is how it is," and the opposite person, party, team is the enemy, whatever, is entirely wrong. We know that's not true, right? So we know that's the good news about human beings. We know when we're in truth, and we know when we're not in truth. And in Sanskrit, there's a great word called satya, truth. Happens to be also the first name of the CEO of Microsoft. It means truth. So we know inside of us when we are in satya and when we're out of satya. And then the question is, well, first of all, especially when we're in a difficult conversation or a challenge, are we willing to be honest with ourselves and look at what is actually true? And then can we say it in a way where we don't arrogantly profess our truth as the truth, because that's not true either. And that's where the part of kindness comes in, like deeply honest and deeply kind. We need to be able to embrace the other person and their perspective with equal power and say, yeah, whatever you're coming from, that's also here. So maybe think about a situation that you're currently in. And I'm thinking about a negotiation I'm currently in. It's a very simple negotiation. It's about the price of something. Actually, a home that I'm thinking about buying. And, I have a sense of what I think is fair. And I'm sure that the seller also has a sense of what's fair. And, I can easily go outside of that because I want to close the deal, or I don't want to feel the discomfort of the uncertainty, or whatever reasons I might have for dishonesty. Or I can listen deeply. And with that, within me, a sense of peacefulness and strength comes online. So, Carson, tell us about what is your experience with speaking your truth, and first of all, figuring out what that is.
Yeah, it's a great topic, Hilke. And when I think about this topic, and when I think about most topics, it's very similar to what you just articulated, and it comes to balance. I don't think a lot of people struggle with communication because they're bad people. They struggle with it because they're afraid. They're afraid of conflict, whether it's creating it or fanning the flame. They're afraid of being misunderstood, not sure exactly how to put their truth out there. They're afraid of losing or sacrificing connection, whether it's strong or real or not. And so a lot of times we'll choose comfort over truth. It's how we're wired. We're often wired to be attracted to or enticed by comfort. And sometimes, unfortunately, we lean into comfort too easily. And that can slowly erode trust. My wife has me reading this book, Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy. And really, a lot of it is looking at our kids and how we parent, and knowing that no matter how bad that tantrum is or how big that is in that moment, that they're a good person inside and they're unsure of how to communicate. Well, believe it or not, some of these things we never outgrow, right? I can still throw tantrums at 47 years old. We've got to look at our colleagues and our friends and our professional acquaintances and others as inherently good inside, even if they're on the other end of the political spectrum, right? And we still have to respect that this is a good person. Their lens is different than mine, and yet there's a balance somewhere in between. The last thing I'll say about this is, it's funny when we talk about the different types of truths, and we're talking about authentic truth today. I think about the late Kelly Preston and Jerry Maguire, and that scene where she was talking about brutal truth. And there's a difference between sugarcoating or whitewashing something so we don't hurt somebody's feelings, and brutal truth, being reactionary. Authentic truth is not about just saying whatever comes off the cuff in the moment. That is just reactionary. It's not a processed reaction. We have to have our own internal filters, and we've talked about a lot of these before. Why am I maybe showing up judgmentally to this situation? Why am I reacting in the way that I'm reacting? Is it because there's some inherent shame or anger that I have that's making me show up this way? And I think that's incredibly important. But authentic truth is what remains after you reflect, which is what you value, what you care about, the desired outcomes, and also how you want the relationship to be after the fact.
Within each person, there's something good. And getting to our truth requires a distillation. And the way that's been explained to me has come from Chris Argyros, the MIT researcher from the 70s. He talked about how we're stuck in this paradigm of two columns of thinking. The right-hand column is our cosmetic truth, go along to get along, being nice because we want to have comfort, because we don't want to upset anybody. We want to please. We want to feel that we're one of us. You're one of us. We belong together. So then we say great, or it's a little problem, or we're just nice. He said that doesn't work, because we both know that doesn't work, because 93% of our communication under stress is not verbal. So even if I'm saying great, you will know that something's up. You know something's off. The other side, he says, the left-hand column is what you talked about as brutality, which is our reactive, judgmental thinking that unfiltered would create a tremendous mess. And it often has a lot of judgment. So if I think about a conflict that I was in with a colleague recently, I had all kinds of reasons why this person was no good at all. And then I can, because my mind is very creative, I create this whole storm within my mind. And all I can see about this other person is how bad they are, how unreliable, how they're good for nothing, how I've always thought this, how this confirms my bias, right? And what Chris Argyros says, we have to go beyond those two opposites of cosmeticism, go beyond the opposites of cosmetics and comfort, and go deeper to courage and what actually is true. And as you said, that requires us sitting with ourselves. And what I do these days, and I'm 53, and I'm nowhere got this, right? Because my mind just keeps spewing up stuff. Like somebody doesn't do something I like them to do, and my mind says, idiot, go get them, make them wrong, whatever that is. Where my husband has taught me this. He's like, when you are in that mode, but you're kind of in a state. And if I can just recognize that I'm in a state, which means there's a tension in my body, my mind's kind of racing, or I'm feeling hard-headed, there's something in me that feels off. That to me is enough reason to say, pause. And I heard a beautiful explanation of pause the other day. Postpone action until sanity emerges.
Ooh.
Postpone action until sanity, or in this case, satya, emerges, until truth emerges. I'm not going to say anything besides maybe in a meeting, I notice, I feel something about this. Oh, I'm processing. I need to think about this, right? And it's not just going into the right-hand column and just going along. I'm saying, no, I'm going to stop. I'm going to postpone action until sanity or satya or serenity emerges. And that's what I'm going to do. And then sometimes it requires a day, Carson, for me to get there. It's like, okay, okay, stop. And the cleaning that often needs to happen is, what judgments do I have right now? Negative assumptions about the other and about the situation. Let them go. And then, what do I really care about? What's this really about? And often it's something like with a colleague who doesn't do what I want them to do. I want to feel safe, or I want to feel we're in this together. And then I realize, are we in this together? Yeah, I think we are. It's just I'm projecting something from the past on this person. So what I will need to say, like, hey, I noticed that I'm not comfortable at the moment with how we are collaborating, or what you're doing, or what I see you do. And then quickly a question. How does it land with you? What do you think? Get to their authentic truth. So that helps me. Carson, tell us about a situation or situations where you find it really hard, challenging to speak your authentic truth.
There are, I can relate to what you just said, Hilke. And I always look at you like my Sherpa and all this. So it's comforting to know that you and I grapple with some of the same emotions around these challenges, right? I've been in a lot of very high stakes, large deal negotiations. And I mean, we're talking about projects that 60 people are touching just from my own organization. And I have a certain way that I believe things should be done. And it's very common for people to maybe step out of these, the blueprint, or maybe it's their first time being on a project of this size. And I have to check myself, but I also have to be honest with myself to realize why I'm feeling this way. And a lot of times it's my own reaction and response with the pressure and the anxiety that I may be feeling. And I have to watch my tone and my wording, just like I have to watch tone and wording with my spouse and with my kids, because words carry weight. Where I may say something casually like, this is a mess, this is a disaster, that's going to land on somebody very negatively. Whereas as opposed to that, on a large project or something where I'm trying to bring the reins back in, saying something closer to, I'm really concerned we're missing alignment. I want to make sure we are successful. Let's talk about this specific priority. It's all in the wording that you choose to use. The same thing as well with, even talking to a colleague, as opposed to saying right out, you don't listen. You never listen. You're not seeming to be reacting and responding to what I say. Backpedal, realize why I'm speaking from that lens, and say something more or less, hey, I don't feel heard in these discussions, and that matters to me. I do want you to see my vantage point, and then we can proceed accordingly. If we decide that I'm not the end all be all, or my vantage point isn't the right one, I certainly want to come to more of a consensus on the perspective or the way we proceed. There are better ways to word these things. And that's why it's all the more important that as you navigate these projects, whether you're having a conversation at home, in your the privacy of your own home, or it's something on a 9-figure deal negotiation, that you make sure you're very intentional about how and why you're showing up with intention, with compassion, with authenticity.
And with that is such a choice, Carson. Like in that moment, I'm first of all choosing, and I'm to ask myself, am I showing up with intention, with compassion, with purpose, with, thank you, with a sneeze, with how I want to show up, as opposed to how my surface ego patterns might want to repeat themselves. We're going to take a moment, a break, and after the break, we'll continue this sense of how do we increase our choicefulness, especially in the midst of the waves of high stakes conversation. See you after the break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So welcome back, Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 76. We're talking about connected communication practice number 3, which is about authentic communication. And we just talked about how important it is to postpone action until satya, serenity, or sanity emerges. And we talked about how it requires us to unlayer, to say, oh, no, it's not that. No, their judgment, no, not that one. And I'm going to be intentional how I'm showing up. For myself, that journey of intentionally showing up can feel like a very long time, like especially in the middle of a conversation, that somebody says something that I'm totally disagreeing with, or I'm thinking, now the project is really not going to work out well, or something is happening with this relationship, and the first thing to notice for me is to remind myself that my triggered self exaggerates. My triggered self will always exaggerate. It will be from 0 to 100 in 0 seconds. Big disaster. As opposed to pause action until serenity emerges. And that sometimes, as we know from the brain science, it takes 8 to 10 seconds, count to 10, to get more into sanity. So we have to give ourselves that grace, because in the current state of human evolution, our brains are equipped to scare us into insanity all day long. It's like, okay, that's what my brain just did. All right. And then I allow myself to own that, because if I don't own that, I'm going to try to rationalize, oh, it's not that bad, or maybe it's that bad, or I have to check with somebody else, or I have to make myself feel safe by not saying what I mean, or exaggerating. Pause. Let all that smoke go. I'll let it go. And then like you're saying, Carson, then really ask myself, like I was asking myself with this colleague, how do I want to show up? How can I be deeply honest and deeply kind? And what I find is that my words are fewer and my questions are more. What about you, Carson? How do you make that choice in the midst of the storm?
I think, as I was actually researching for this, I wanted to find better words to put the flow. And it's very similar to what you just articulated. First, I think you have to come to the realization of why is this so critical? And, there was a line that really jumped out at me, and it's unspoken truth doesn't actually disappear. It turns into distance, resentment, politics, and disengagement. And that is the cost of not speaking truth. Silence might feel safe in the moment, but it's expensive over time, because, you may give one persona that everything's great, whether it's to your wife who knows better, or to your team. But the reality is, if you're not candid and transparent about what's actually going on, there will be erosion over time of yourself, of trust, of all the things that matter. And so, the way that I frame this up is before you speak, and I love your pause element. That's going to be something that I apply. But I always think of three entities in this dynamic. And number one is I, or self. Number two is we and the relationship. And then number three is it, or the task. And so from a self perspective, what am I actually feeling beneath this reaction? What is it that's being triggered in me by this situation? What would compel me to seek comfort or quiet or brutal truth? And again, brutal truth comes out of frustration and exasperation, but it's not with that person. It's about the situation. And so that's why it's so important that I control that element and I do pause. What do I actually care about here? Is it being heard and seen? Then there's got to be a better way for me to convey that. Second, I think about we, or the relationship. So if it's you and I in a conversation, think intentionally about what kind of relationship do I want to have after this conversation. I want a partnership. I want collaboration. And I've often found value in really framing it up about really understanding the other person's perspective of the situation, what they need to get out of the project. Because if I can see it from that lens, it changes everything. Because I may be thinking, gosh, I got to jam it down this path. But wow, wait a minute. They see this blind spot that I didn't even think about or see. They could very much be going about something that's similar purpose, but we're going about it almost against each other because we don't understand what each other's grappling with. So I think about the relationship. What kind of relationship do I want with this person or these people after this conversation? And lastly, once you frame that up, what's the outcome that I want for this work or this situation? If we're chasing this mega deal, or we just want to have a really successful team meeting, and there's a lot of talking heads and people that want to be heard and seen, how can I make sure that everybody feels better? Nobody's ever going to get their perfect scenario in every conversation or call or project, but as long as everybody feels invested and seen and like they're part of the equation, that's what matters. And then you can deliver with honesty, with humility, with respect, and with purpose.
That integral way of what truth is, and I hear you speaking about authentic truth as having three legs: the I, the self, the we, relationship, and the it, purpose. And truth is both about going deep, meaning what do I really care about, and going wide. So going deep, what I really care about, and going wide. How can I integrate the bigger perspective so I don't just get into my feelings or just think about how you might see it or just think about what I want to achieve, because each of them is incomplete. And more truth comes from juxtaposing and holding varying perspectives at the same time. There's a beautiful word about that. It's called conjoining, like joining it together and holding it together. It's like a stew. Like truth is like stew. A good stew, you put many ingredients together, and sometimes you need to let it sit overnight. Don't overheat it. Like, don't get like that. That's overheating. It's taking a break. Okay, let it, give it some air, give it some time, and bring those different elements together of I, we, it, and whatever perspectives seem to be relevant at that time. And the beautiful thing about that is that something in our nervous system knows when we're out of truth, and something in our nervous system knows when we're in truth. And Gandhi expresses that as this word called satyagraha, which means truth force. There's a power that comes online where you can stand alone, like the old lady or the child in the Emperor Without Clothes, right? Or in the 12 Angry Men movie, where there's one juror that's holding up his perspective while all the 11 say, this is how this person is. Like, well, but and it's not, and truth doesn't have to be right. Truth, speaking truth has a sense of unapologetic and unopposed. This is my gift to you. Just like when you're playing an instrument. like the bassoon does not oppose the trumpet. The trumpet just plays. Here's how I see it. What do you see? And that energetic transmission of being in truth, that sounds maybe a little crazy, but just hearing somebody else speak truth, be vulnerable, be open, will catalyze the same in the person you're speaking with. Many times, not always. Don't count on it, because if you count on it, it's manipulation. You're out of truth again. So, final few minutes here, Carson. What would you say to a person who's in the midst of the waves with somebody, feels flooded? Like, how the heck? Where do you start?
Yeah, it requires bravery. I mean, that's the short version of it. You have to be brave enough to know your truth, to own it, to take ownership of it, and to share it in a way that strengthens the people that you're working with, or the team, or the purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key element. It's not always the comfortable thing. That's why the 11 jurors go one way, because it seemed like the quote unquote obvious choice. I've been fortunate, because in my career and in my life, I've often gone off on gone off the beaten paths, and it's panned out well, but it can be a lonely road. And so you have to be prepared for that. But you also have to be real with yourself as to why I'm doing this. And I mean, even if it comes down to having a conversation, and there are moments of vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable in these moments where you want to reach a point of authentic truth. Telling somebody, even if, let's say, you anticipate a conflict in this conversation, or you're dreading this discussion, like, set the table. I value this relationship. We need this relationship to work. I need this relationship to work. I learn a lot from you. I believe we can handle real conversations, and I'm committed to our shared success. But I got to tell you, I don't feel like I'm having the impact, or I'm having the involvement that I need to be having. And don't feel this compulsion. I think sometimes we give into the compulsion to feel like we have to over explain, or we have to overly justify our vantage point. Trust that person enough where you can put that feeling out there, and they're going to reciprocate. They're going to meet you halfway. They may not. And frankly, I think sometimes, we've probably all been burned in situations like this too, where we've let guard down and it hasn't worked well. But you also don't want to get to a place where, just because I had a poor vulnerability moment back in 2023 with a leader, I don't want to apply that lens to my relationships today. Go back to that. People are inherently good inside. Give them the trust and instill the faith, and make the investment of authenticity with that person, and see what happens. You may be very pleasantly surprised, but I think we have to own that. We've got to speak our truth with care. And if I speak my authentic truth with care with you, I'm not attacking. I'm investing in this relationship, and that's what's important.
Then I'm investing in this relationship. Let's leave it there for today, that sharing truth also requires a context. I want to talk to you about something because it's important for our relationship. I think that we talk about it, and I have a sense that we can do that. And from my perspective, and I'm not even quite sure yet how I'm feeling about this sometimes, or I'm grappling with it. I don't have it all figured out. Being able to practice this idea of micro authentic truth, saying like keeping it small. This is what I sense, but I may be totally off. And I feel I would want to share it anyway, because of the quote that you just mentioned earlier about unspoken truth don't create peace. They create a lot of havoc down the line. I just want to keep things, make it clean. And then the other thing to that for me is speaking truth can be lonely. It was 12 angry men and one juror. Like, the emperor has no clothes, one person. It's very important. So I think acknowledging that and saying, yeah, this might not feel so good, because we can feel the rest of the quote unquote tribe group we're in wants the other way and we want to go the other way, we're going to feel that. So I think for me, it's helping ourselves to really take care of ourselves in that moment. Maybe take a walk, take a breath, maybe remind yourself, I'm enough. I appreciate myself. Even though this may not be going very well, I appreciate myself because I know why I'm here. Carson, final word.
Bravery. Have the courage to be yourself in every situation. And the more frequently you do it, the more common it will become for you.
Make truthfulness and kindness a habit so it becomes you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode from the Connected Teamwork Podcast. I was here with Carson Heddy. I'm your host, Hilke Farber, and see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.
I think we're going to hear the outro again. So enjoy this outro for the second time. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.